I cheated, not because my husband was bad, but because I was foolish. And now, every evening, I cook dinner for him, sit in silence waiting, and watch him walk away as if I never existed. My name is Lena Matthews, 34 years old, and I am a betrayer. There's no way to soften that truth. I betrayed my husband, the man who held my hand through the devastation of our first miscarriage, who stood in the rain for hours waiting for me after my first job interview, who even now folds the kitchen towel neatly after washing the dishes. I didn't betray him because I hated him, nor because our marriage was broken. It wasn't that he was cold, abusive, or neglectful. On the contrary, Daniel was the husband every woman dreams of. We have 2 sons, Ben and Lucas, 12 and 9. I've been a stay-at-home mom for over a decade, ever since Daniel was promoted to architectural manager at a major design firm in Columbus, Ohio. I used to be an elementary school teacher, but when Lucas was born, I chose to set aside my career to nurture our family. You might be wondering, why then? I ask myself that every single day since it all fell apart. It began one autumn afternoon. I was picking out pumpkins with Ben for Halloween at the local farmer's market when Ethan, our new neighbor 3 houses down, walked over to say hello. Ethan was 29, childless, working in digital advertising. His wife, Monica, was a nurse who often worked night shifts. They were the youngest couple in our neighborhood, cheerful, friendly, always inviting neighbors over for iced tea on their porch. The first time I felt something different was on a Friday morning. I was watering the front yard when Ethan jogged by, stopped, waved, and said, "You've got a real knack for gardening, Lena. That lavender smells amazing." Just a casual compliment. But his voice, his gaze, something about it made my heart skip a beat. I started talking to Ethan more. At the coffee shop nearby, at the grocery store, when Monica was gone, when Daniel was buried in work. We shared small stories, then deeper, more personal ones. Ethan told me I looked younger than my age, called me smart, and said I had this quiet allure that no one fully sees. I laughed it off, but inside, something sparked, like a lamp flickering to life in a room long left dark. I knew it was heading somewhere wrong, but I didn't stop. The first time we were intimate was on a rainy morning. I lied to Daniel, saying I had a spa appointment out of town. Instead, I went to Ethan's rented apartment, a place he used when he needed to focus on work. We slept together, and the most terrifying part? I didn't feel guilty in that moment. Only later, when it all exploded, did I understand what it means for guilt to eat you alive. That morning was gray, with a fine mist cloaking the neighborhood. Daniel had left early to take Lucas to a survival skills camp at school. Ben was already at school by 7:30. I waited until the house was silent, then texted Ethan. "Monica worked the night shift, right?" Within seconds, he replied, "Yeah. She got home at 6:30 and crashed. Now's the perfect time." I drove to Ethan's office, really just a hideaway for us, tucked in a small second-floor apartment near downtown, far from our sleepy suburb. No one in Ashridge would know. We drank coffee, played soft jazz. Ethan kissed my neck like always, his hands slipping under my shirt. Every sense in me drowned in the reckless thrill of someone living a lie they thought was love. I didn't know the nightmare was already at the door. Around 9:45 a.m., the door, left ajar by Ethan's carelessness, flew open, and there stood Catherine, Monica's mother. She was in her 60s, tall, with platinum hair and eyes sharp as knives. In her hand was a grocery bag, still tagged. The second she saw me, there was no hesitation. She screamed, her voice like thunder tearing the room apart. "Lena Matthews? What the hell are you doing with my son-in-law?" I barely had time to pull my shirt up before she charged like a storm. Ethan scrambled to his feet, but it was too late. Crack! A slap landed hard across my left cheek. My ears rang. I staggered, but before I could react, her other hand grabbed my hair, yanking me off the sofa, dragging me across the cold wooden floor. "You filthy traitor." I knew it. "I saw the way you looked at him," she roared, her eyes blazing. Ethan lunged to pull her off, but not before her red-painted nails raked a bloody line across his chest. I tore free from her grip, stumbling up in a half-dressed panic, grabbing my clothes, tears spilling from fear and shame. Catherine stood there, panting, face flushed, eyes spitting fire. "I'm telling your husband. I swear on my husband's grave. Everyone will know what a disgusting woman you are." I stammered. "Please, don't tell Daniel." "Daniel?" Daniel deserves a decent woman, not a snake like you. I fled the apartment, hair a mess, legs trembling, heart pounding. In the car, I vomited next to the steering wheel. The shock, the fear, the filth, like hundreds of hands clawing at me, dragging me into a pit. When I got home, Daniel's car wasn't there. A fleeting sense of safety crept in, but it lasted only minutes. Less than half an hour later, Catherine and Monica were at my door. They pounded like maniacs, screaming curses, banging the front hall's glass until neighbors started peeking out. I was too terrified to face them, to even breathe loudly, unsure who to call or what to do. They stopped only when Daniel's car pulled into the street. I froze. He got out, his face calm, oblivious. But as Monica rushed to whisper in his ear, I saw everything shift. His eyes locked onto me through the glass door, empty, devoid of feeling. Just a terrifying silence, like death itself. I stepped outside, desperate to hold him, to explain. But Daniel backed away, cold as a stranger. He said only one thing. Go inside. Pack your things. Leave. Rain had stopped, but the neighborhood felt coated in damp ash. Monica was sobbing. Catherine stood, hands on hips, glaring as if she'd stone me given another second. Daniel didn't look at me. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number I knew too well. I heard the voice through the speaker. Hello? What's wrong with Lena, honey? Mom, come to the house. Lena's staying with you tonight. My heart plummeted. Daniel, please don't do this. He cut me off, not raising his voice, but colder than the first winter wind. You have 20 minutes. I don't want you here when the sun sets. I screamed, clutching his sleeve. I'm sorry. It was the stupidest mistake of my life. But Daniel, I love you. I don't want a divorce. I don't want to lose the boys. He shoved my hand away, hard enough that I nearly fell. Monica gasped, and Catherine sneered. Love? You call sneaking into my son-in-law's bed love? You're wrong, Lena. You only loved feeling wanted. This family. You threw it out like trash. Daniel turned inside without another word. The door slammed shut like a coffin lid. My mother arrived 15 minutes later. She stepped out of the car and burst into tears. Oh, Lena, how could you do this? Do you know how good Daniel was to you? He never gave me a single reason to complain. I didn't answer. I just packed a suitcase, trembling, as the house, once filled with laughter, closed in on me like a lifeless wall. Daniel didn't come down to see me off. He didn't say anything. He left an envelope on the dining table, a photocopy of our marriage certificate, bank statements, and a blank sheet of paper. No note. That empty page was more terrifying than any curse. That night, in my childhood bedroom at my mother's house, I didn't sleep, didn't breathe, just cried until my throat burned. Near midnight, I texted Daniel. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Just give me one chance. No reply. I called. It rang 3 times. He picked up. It's me. Please, don't shut me out. Silence for nearly a minute. Daniel? Can you hear me? Then his voice, exhausted and hollow, like a walking corpse. I have nothing left to say. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I sobbed uncontrollably. He didn't hang up right away. He let me cry, as if he wanted me to hear my own shattering. Then he said, don't call again. I'm meeting a lawyer. You'll get the papers soon. Beep, beep, beep. 3 days after that call, I received a court summons from Bradley and Moore. A white envelope with an Ohio courthouse stamp. My heart nearly stopped at the first 3 words, petition for divorce. Attached was a preliminary asset division. Daniel offered me all the money in our joint account to expedite the process. He was willing to give up everything, as long as I vanished from his life and the boys. Part of me wanted to scream. Are you punishing me by erasing every trace of us? But deep down, I knew I'd pulled the trigger first. That night, curled up in my childhood room, the dim bedside lamp cast shadows as memories tore into me like wolves. I remembered Daniel giving me my wedding ring with his first bonus. The time he kissed me under falling snow in a grocery store parking lot. How he called me the keeper of our family's flame. Now that flame was ash, and I was the one who'd poured the gasoline. But I couldn't let go. I couldn't accept that it would end with a full stop. The next morning, I scoured the internet for post-nuptial agreements, a last-ditch legal plea to salvage our marriage, even if just a scrap. I met 4 lawyers in 2 days. The first 3 refused, saying I was committing financial suicide. But the fourth, a gray-haired woman named Martha Levins, in an office on the 12th floor of a glass building, stared at me for a long time before asking, "Do you really want to do this?" I nodded, choking. "I don't care about money. I need a chance." It took 5 days to draft the agreement. What I presented to Daniel was total surrender. If he agreed to stay with me for at least 30 months, I'd forfeit all financial claims if we divorced afterward. If I cheated again, I'd get nothing. No assets, no alimony, no custody. I had to find a full-time job within 6 months and contribute financially. And finally, he was free to date other women. I signed with shaking hands, not out of regret for the money, but because I was laying my heart on a butcher's block. That evening, I slipped the agreement into an envelope and drove to Daniel's office, where he often worked late on weekends. I stood outside my car for nearly an hour before mustering the courage to knock. He opened the door, saw me, and said nothing. I held out the envelope, my voice breaking. "This isn't an apology. It's just, I can't live without trying one last time." He didn't invite me in. He took the envelope and shut the door. 2 days later, he called. The first time in nearly 2 weeks. I read it. 3 words, but my heart pounded. "I'll agree, but I'm adding one condition." "What?" A pause. Then, "You don't touch me." I went numb. "Daniel, please." "No, please." "You want to live with me?" "Fine. But I'm not your husband anymore. I'm just Ben and Lucas's father. Where will we sleep?" "Separate beds. Separate worlds." I signed the addendum through tears. Our second marriage began. No ceremony, no rings, no smiles. Just 2 people living under one roof, like ghosts raising 2 children. I returned to 117 Olive Street with a small suitcase, some clothes, an old perfume bottle, and the agreement, like a death warrant on hold. Daniel didn't open the door. Lucas, my youngest, ran out, throwing his arms around me, shouting, "Mom's back! Mom's back!" I cried right there on the doorstep. That tiny embrace was the first warmth I'd felt in weeks. But behind Lucas, Daniel stood, arms crossed, face expressionless. "Your room's downstairs, next to the living room. I've cleared it out." I nodded, hugged Lucas tightly, and stepped into the house. Once my home, now my prison, with 3 witnesses and 1 prisoner. From then on, per the agreement I'd signed, I took monthly STD tests and sent Daniel the results. No one forced me. It was my own doing. He never asked about me, never ate at the same table, never rode in the same car. If I got too close, he'd step back. If I accidentally brushed his hand, he'd wipe it with a wet cloth. Cold, deliberate, as if touching something too dirty to clean. I was a ghost in my own home. When the boys had soccer games, we took turns driving them. If I went, he sat 3 rows away, eyes averted. If he went asterisk, 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 I began job hunting. I sent resumes everywhere, bookstores, insurance offices, tutoring centers. A former award-winning teacher, now stammering apologies for a decade-long gap. But no one knew the real reason I'd quit wasn't just the kids. It was because I'd stopped being a wife. Eventually, I landed a job at a flower shop near the town square. Low pay, early mornings to late afternoons, but I didn't care. Anything to avoid sitting alone in that frigid house, listening to Daniel's footsteps pass without a glance. Every morning, I woke at 5:30, made breakfast for the boys, dropped them off if it was my turn, went to work, came home, cooked dinner, ate alone, then tended the few surviving plants on the patio. This went on for nearly a year and a half. No hugs, no kisses, no warm glances. Just me, trying to smile, trying not to mess up again, and crying into my pillow at night so no one would hear. I asked Daniel once, just once, "Is there ever a chance we could love each other again?" He didn't look at me. The part of me that loved you died that day. I left on a cloudy Tuesday afternoon while Daniel was at work and the boys were at school. I left a note on the kitchen table. "I'm stepping back for a while, to let you breathe. I'm not giving up, just retreating, because I don't know what else to do but wait for you to forgive me." I didn't sign it. To Daniel, Lena was no longer a name worth writing. The apartment I rented was 15 minutes from our old house. Tiny, 2 rooms, pale yellow walls, a small window overlooking a parking lot. No garden, no vintage gas stove, no sound of children laughing. Just me, and a loneliness that rotted day by day. I called the boys every night, asked about their meals, their homework, their sleep. Sometimes Daniel answered. His voice wasn't sharp anymore, just cold, like riverbed stones. A month after I moved out, he texted. The first time. Ben asked when you're coming back. Can you come for dinner Friday? I stared at the screen, tears blurring it. It took 5 minutes to type one word. Yes. That night, I wore the pale green dress Daniel once said made me look like spring. I baked an apple pie, his favorite, carrying it like the last relic of my wifehood. I stepped into the house, greeted by warm golden light, the smell of wood, and a haunting familiarity. Daniel didn't open the door. Ben rushed to hug me. Lucas grinned. And Daniel stood at the end of the hall, arms crossed, his gaze lingering 2 seconds before turning away. We ate, talked a little. I forced smiles. Daniel nodded occasionally. I thought, maybe. But hope died again when I stepped to the door and whispered, "Thank you for letting me come home tonight." Daniel looked at me. His eyes weren't cold anymore. They were empty, hollow enough to chill me. This isn't your home anymore, Lena. Don't fool yourself. I left, carrying a heart nailed through. 3 weeks later, I returned because Lucas was sick. Daniel let me stay overnight, the first time in nearly 2 years. We slept in separate rooms, as always. That night, I got up for water and heard a noise from the living room. I stepped out and froze. Daniel was there, eyes red, holding a photo, our wedding picture. He was crying. I didn't dare speak, didn't dare approach, just stood, as if someone had ripped open my chest and wrung my heart dry. He looked up, saw me, and said, voice hoarse, "I still love you, Lena. But every time I see you in his arms. And it kills me, every second." I sank to my knees, trembling like a child. Daniel, I'm sorry. I'd spend the rest of my life washing away that mistake. Just give me a real chance, not to exist as a shadow. He wiped his eyes, set the photo down, then stood, heading for the stairs. Before disappearing, he said, "We're getting divorced. But maybe someday, if I'm strong enough, I'll call you. But not while we're still bound by papers." I felt like I'd been pushed off a skyscraper. Falling, endless, silent. No scream, just the sound of myself breaking. The divorce was finalized on March 5th at the Ashridge courthouse, on a frigid afternoon with snow dusting the rooftops. No disputes. No division. Daniel let me keep all the money in our joint account. I refused every dime. We drove to court together, silent the whole way. I wore a long cream coat. He wore a white shirt and gray sweater, his face stern but worn by 2 years of exhaustion. After signing, Daniel stood and said, "I have a strange request for tonight." My heart sank. We had a wedding, but we never had a goodbye, something proper to close it. That evening, I stepped into a small wooden cabin north of town, the place we'd honeymooned years ago. Candles lined the hall. A small table was set. Wine, crystal glasses, 2 chairs facing each other. Daniel emerged from the kitchen, holding a bottle. Just dinner. No promises. No clinging. Just a farewell, done right. I nodded, tears already brimming. We ate, drank, reminisced. He laughed about the time I burned our first dinner. I teased him for being jealous of Lucas's too handsome pediatrician. We smiled, fragile smiles borrowed from a past version of us. Then Daniel stood, played an old jazz tune. He held out his hand. "Will you dance with me one last time?" I nodded. We stepped to the center of the room, hands touching. Warm, but distant. He whispered, "Maybe, in another reality, we didn't break." I choked. "I'd love you, even in realities that don't exist." The song ended. I stepped back to leave, but Daniel pulled me close, his hand light on my waist. His eyes met mine, the first time in 2 years without walls. And then he kissed me. Not passionate, not carnal. A sacred goodbye. The first kiss in 2 years. The last of a marriage already dead. He touched my cheek, whispering, "I still love you. But love isn't enough to live together." I left the cabin near midnight. I didn't look back, because if I had, I'd have run to him, sobbing, begging. And this time, I wouldn't let myself. I left that cabin like I'd walked out of my own funeral. 3 days later, I left Ashridge for good. No longer the mom at 117 Olive Street. No longer Mrs. Matthews. I rented a small apartment in Bexley, less than 20 minutes from Columbus, where no one knew me, where my past couldn't catch up in neighbors' stares. I switched jobs to manage a larger, busier flower shop with a young, noisy staff oblivious to the word divorce. Those first nights in Bexley, I slept with the lights on. Not because of ghosts. Because darkness was where the past whispered in Daniel's voice. Sometimes I'd wake at 3 a.m., heart racing, thinking I was still in our old bed, waiting for his touch and his words, "I forgive you." But there was no one. Just the ticking clock and a pillow still creased. I cut my hair short. I threw out the white wedding dress from an old suitcase. I deleted our wedding photos, not to forget, but because I couldn't relive the pain every time I scrolled past. I started morning walks, relearning how to breathe. I kept a journal. Blank pages became the only place I could cry without judgment. One June afternoon, while arranging tulips for a customer, I heard a voice behind me. "Lena?" I turned. It was Rachel, my college best friend, unseen for nearly 8 years. She froze, then said softly, "You look so different." I smiled faintly, a touch sad. "Different how? You used to glow. Now, you're like a candle just snuffed out." We talked at a cafe across the street. I didn't hide. I told her everything. The affair, Daniel, the post-nuptial agreement, the final kiss in that winter cabin. Rachel listened, then took my hand tightly. "You're not a monster. You're human. And humans make mistakes." I cried, not because her words erased my guilt, but because, for the first time in 2 years, someone looked at me without judgment. Rachel visited often after that. We cooked, watched movies, or just sat in silence. I started painting again, a hobby abandoned since the boys were born. My first finished piece was a wilted lavender stem, snapped in a desert. One day, I got a letter. No sender, no signature, just one handwritten line. "If you ever truly forgive yourself, come back to where I first loved you." I didn't need a name. I knew. I went there on a late summer afternoon. No sun, no rain, just a hazy light filtering through trees, as if the universe itself was unsure. Hayden's Corner, the old bookstore where Daniel and I met, when I spilled coffee on his blueprint draft. I was a broke junior then. He was a quiet, newly hired architect. The wooden door creaked as I entered, the smell of old books hitting me. A man stood at the third shelf, back to me. I didn't need to see his face. I knew that stance. And his voice, soft. "You came?" I couldn't speak. My throat locked. He turned, white shirt, hair longer, thinner than before. But those eyes, still Daniel, from then and now. "You wrote it?" I asked. He nodded. "I wanted to know if we could start again, by looking back to where we fell in love." I laughed, bitter. "You said love wasn't enough to stay together. So why call me back?" He looked at me, long and steady. "Because every day without you, I survive. But it's empty. Not pain anymore, just nothing." We sat at the same wooden table from our first date. He pulled a paper from his pocket, the post-nuptial agreement I'd begged him to sign. I voided it, he said. Not because it was unfair, but because, if we try again, I don't want it built on fear. I was speechless. He tore the paper in half, then looked at me. "I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking, do you have the courage to love me, knowing I may never be the same?" I stayed silent, then pulled out my journal, 2 years of scribbled pain, and set it before him. "I've loved you in every page, every lavender I replanted, every dream where I begged you to forgive me, and you didn't answer." He opened it. "Read the first line. Day 1 after being exiled from my own marriage." I was wrong, but my heart still beats for that man. We didn't speak again, just sat together. 2 strangers who'd shared a bed, children, a lifetime, now trying to share a fragile hope. A week later, Daniel called on a Friday evening. His voice was soft, almost a whisper. "I want to take you somewhere." No old talk. No questions. Just go, like strangers meeting again. I agreed. It was drizzling. He picked me up in our old honeymoon car, smelling of worn leather, the radio playing the jazz I'd loved. We drove in silence. He took me to a small wooden cabin by a lake. Not ours, but new. As if he'd chosen a place free of ghosts, where we could start at zero. Inside, a fire crackled. He handed me a glass of wine, leaning against the window, staring at the dark lake. "Scared?" he asked. I nodded. "Scared you'll forgive me out of loneliness. Scared I'll fail again. Scared we'll hurt each other." He nodded back. "I'm scared too. I thought deep love meant no betrayal. But I forgot. You can love and still err. And forgiveness isn't erasing the past. It's living with it without letting it kill you daily." We sat on the rug, silent for ages. I asked, "So what are we now?" He smiled faintly, The smile he gave when I once spilled milk dancing in the kitchen. We're two people who loved each other to pieces. Now learning to love again, slower, harder, truer. I cried, not from sorrow, but because I finally believed I deserved to be loved again. Daniel didn't promise to remarry me. Didn't promise to share my bed, my home, my life like before. He said only, I'll call you every morning. I'll hold your hand when you're scared. I'll stay when you panic. And if you leave, I won't stop you, but I'll remember. We hugged, not as spouses, not as exes, as two broken souls, holding each other to see if their hearts could beat again, scarred as they were. 3 months later, Daniel moved closer to me. No remarriage. No social media posts. We walked together Sunday afternoons. Talked nightly. Read side by side. And every time he passed my flower shop, he'd stop, buy a lavender sprig, set it on my counter, and smile. Smells beautiful. Like when I first loved you. The end isn't forgiveness. It isn't forgetting. It's when two people admit, we failed, but we still choose each other. With every scar, every truth, every bit of love left.